Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to see people today as we're going to be in step one. This will be fun for me, live teaching the didactic portion of the Biopara, what it is, how you'll use it, etc. The addition of live work together means I can also give you time to practice. So I've built in an interactive exercise. Step one, your Biopara is telling your story so others can hear you. Recently, I was driving up to see my sisters in Massachusetts, and I got up towards Providence, and suddenly, I don't know if I was in the wrong lane and I spaced out a little bit. I found myself on the bypass around Providence, which took me 5 miles out of my way, extra time, then going directly. And as I was driving and had more chance to reflect, I thought, this is a lot like why I work with people on a Biopara. I tell too much of my story. Guess what? I'm the queen of this. I've done this all my life. The Biopara is the beginning for you of a way to take control of your professional presence. Here's the takeaway I want you to remember. You need to control your side of the convo. And every opportunity is a two-way convo, even if it's asynchronous. I do this because a lot of the reason that I developed this course was giving people back power in situations where you're trying to get a job, get a promotion, make a career pivot, be heard for your expertise, all of those things. I want to do just a quick Slido poll. Hopefully you're familiar with Slido or something similar. Point your camera if you have an extra device, or go to slido.com and put in the number 418-7562. No value judgment. Do you have a summary of any kind on your resume or your short CV? And you'll see me pointing my camera because I haven't done it yet. And it's up to you what somewhat is. If Slido's hard for you, you can always use the chat. That's great. All right, we've got some yeses coming in. We've got some nos. Part of the reason that I do this is because we're going away from the long CV, which was traditional when I was working in global health for decades. We have lost the idea that we do anything other than resume. And those of you who know French may know that resume comes from French, and it means a short version and not everything in it, from our long version, which is everything. So today we're going to go over, do I have a story? Then we're going to talk about what is a Biopara. It's a word that I invented. Then on to how to write it. And you'll see I've got detailed instructions, lots of examples. And you're going to get right into breakout rooms. We're going to do a 10-minute exercise to give you a chance to start working on this. When we come back together, you're going to hear more about how a Biopara helps you in ways you may not even be aware of. And then I have just a few don'ts that I want you to be aware of. We'll be talking more about these in step 2 especially. And we'll end with the newest addition to this course, which is how can AI help me, in this case for a Biopara. Many of you may know me already just from connecting on LinkedIn, but here's the important things for you. I bring my pom-poms all the time. I did work globally. I lived overseas for 20 years and worked in a lot of different countries, even after I came back to the United States. I love to consider myself a digital pioneer because I went through the regular typewriter, an electric typewriter, a word processor, and finally got an early computer. Do you have a story? You're going to hear a few things. Tell me what resonates with you. Many course learners say, Sue, I don't like the tell me about yourself. I don't know what to say. I wander. Good news. You will now have a guide in this, me, and materials and experience, and most of all, so many of my mentees who've given me approval to use all of their examples, so you don't start with a blank page. People have been telling me, signing up for the course, Sue, I want to be seen, but I feel like I'm invisible, like I'm a silhouette. No one knows what I do. I try to convey it, and I'm not getting there. The good news is you will take control of your professional development. You'll end up giving people in your Biopara a snapshot of the entire you. Let me remind myself and all of you, we don't have to give everybody the information dump immediately. And this one I continue to hear lengths of resumes it's getting a little bit easier to not fall into, oh, it has to be exactly 2 pages. They tell me I can't fit any more on my resume. I'm not going to put my Biopara there. When you do, the other side of the convo is going to be listening to you. They're going to be reading your information, hearing you use it in a way that's resonating for them when you talk to what they need to hear from you. It gives you back the power in the conversation. And I'm all about, especially for us starting out, for women, we need to take back our power at every occasion we can. What is a biopara? It's not quite this big a view of the earth, but it's definitely a 30,000-foot view. You're getting a snapshot of what's down there. You can see out of the plane. There's some mountains covered with trees or grass. I can see a couple of valleys, but off in a distance, I see bigger mountains. It gives me a snapshot of that and makes me curious to want to learn more. And that's what your Biopara does. It helps you use it, but when it's on asynchronous documents like a resume or woven into a cover letter, you will find people being curious about, oh, Sue did this. I'd like to know more about them. I told you I invented the word. The word I invented came from a biography and a paragraph. It may be known as a summary para or a bio sketch. I stopped using the word summary because when I used the word summary, everybody thought that they could write as long as they wanted. Tell me, thumbs up or thumbs down or any emojis you want in the chat. Are you ready to get started and learn how to use your power that you have in a way that I can show you how to convey it? Thank you very much, Anwar. Thank you all for the engagement. Thanks. Let's talk about what it means to write a biopara. Here's the document you're going to get. I put this together back in 2015 when I did my first workshop on this at the Tulane School of Public Health. When the person that I was working with at Career Services said to me, Sue, you need to give them a written recipe. I updated it last year with more modern examples and also by kinds of experience and degrees. And there's more on another page, as well as those that you'll see during the course, in the course book, and also in the videos. I'm going to give you the link to this when we get started on the interactive. One of the things that I also work on is scannability and readability. Give me a 1 in the chat box if you've heard this probably not a well-collected research statement that says recruiters only take 6 to 10 seconds scanning down the left-hand margin of your resume. Have you heard that, Sintu? Rachel, yes. Rena, yes. Kate, thank you. Chidinma. It's very common, but I know we all scan now, and I'll show you an example of how you can test that on yourself. But we also want readability. We want people to understand what we're saying. Here's the way this instructions go. The very first sentence is the big vision. Number 1, you get to choose your own title. This is not the title of the most recent job you had. It's not your graduate assistant title. It's not the retail analyst you were when you were in undergrad. It is what you've chosen as your title. And you can see some of these are maybe a little unusual. Emerging sustainable materials specialist. Probably not a lot of jobs for that specific name, but it conveys a lot to people who are interested in that area of what the person might bring. And these are actual titles from everybody I've worked with. The rest of the sentence is the big picture of what you've done, but also that aims you at where you want to go. And if you want to start working now in gender and equity, you can relate past experience and not say, I really want to get a job in gender and equity. You talk about where you've applied transferable skills or cross-cutting skills in that, in other work you've done. So in this case, the person is an emerging health systems services and systems researcher. So now we know the particular research she focuses on. She has 5 years of experience, but she says almost all is in qualitative research. Program eval and implementation, which tells me she's much more focused on how programs work than people who design, for example, clinical trials. And we see that she's worked domestically and globally. There's no one right way for your first sentence. It doesn't have to include all of these elements, and you'll see a variety of them in the way we move forward. The second sentence works with the first and helps you describe your general areas of expertise. I pulled out a picture of my closet that I've used for a few years. It's organized, but there's too much in it, and it's hard to look down the closet and see what's in it. That's what my sentence says to you on the left-hand side. That's what I had until 2016 when I changed it to the much simpler one. I didn't need to say everything I've ever done in my research and evaluation and program life. I just needed to say what I was working on at that point, which was evaluating different levels of performance of systems. Your third is usually your current work and a result, but in some cases, you may want to pull forward something you did before what you're currently working on, or if you're job searching and it's been a while, because you may want to demonstrate the experience that you had at that time. So in this case, this is a person who established and led environmental fora for staff at his org, improved sustainability education in school and university settings through delivering workshops. So we know that he knows how to convene groups to work together. We know how he's improved education through delivering workshops. He has training skills as well. You're giving evidence-based results while helping people understand what you bring to them. This was a last semester public health PH graduate that I was working with through a program who said to me, Sue, I really want to work in biostatistics and in some of these areas specifically. I don't want to be working in general research. So we talked about how he applied his skills in that to something he'd worked on during graduate school. So we really focused on the credibility coming from this data set of 161 participants and all the list of things that he wanted to be hired for that we knew from looking at job postings that they were asking for this kind of specialty in skills. The fourth, fifth, and sixth sentences help you show people the unusual things that you bring. This is what makes each of us unique. We can all go to the same high school, undergrad, and graduate school and come out looking different. Maybe we have certain technology skills. We've won awards. We did Peace Corps or an interesting internship. Career pivot, that's the bottom right corner. Also, publications, presentations, that's a way you demonstrate all your communication skills. And that's important for us in public health to be able to talk to different audiences. There's a couple examples here. This person's worked on things in minority communities and for minorities, both in mental and sexual reproductive health care. But she also talked about how she worked in Turkey and she included her languages. That's very common at the end of your Biopara. You'll hear more about languages in step 2. Another person talked mostly about what he was doing in his scientific research and writing up an article and then having the opportunity to present it at the American Public Health Association annual meeting. So we now know that he is a researcher, but also that he's had experience communicating the research results both in writing and in a conference of peers. That's the 6 sentences. People asked me to shorten the Biopara recipe because they feel like it's too much text, which is fine. You can shorten it in any way you want. I have people who recently decided they were only putting in 2 or 3 sentences. Again, this is your professional development. I'll give you advice that I know works for people in the settings that you all are interested in and experienced in terms of global work. but it's up to you to decide how much you want to include. When you do the work on this Biopara, it's also going to prepare you for more than just something you place on your resume and your long CV. It's going to be the evidence, the examples, and the ways you can demonstrate your credibility because you have actual stories to tell about all your experiences. All right. Yes or no? Are we ready to start writing into breakout rooms for 10 minutes? There's a bit.ly link here down at the bottom, and then the Dropbox is the very long link. Either one will get you to it, and you can download it from Dropbox. So here we are back again at the instructions. I put the box up there, and I didn't realize till I was working on this presentation in the last week. Sometimes I was getting people putting boxes onto their resume, and it's my fault because I gave you the box because I want people not to think they can write a whole page. I thought I'll show them a third of the pages, and then I realized people were putting a box around it. You just need to use the text when you cut and paste it to other places. You do not have to use the box in what you send me in a Word doc or a Google Doc. There's more on that in the workbook. Let me show you a Biopara and why it's important to think about writing it and having it. When people open up your resume or a short CV in the global world, maybe even up to 4 pages, the first thing they're going to see is your heading information. I'm Sue Griffey. Here's my degrees. Here's my LinkedIn URL, etc. Right under that, you want to have your Biopara so that you can grab control of the conversation. So you are weaving together a story that someone can read about you instead of making them go down the list of Sue was a researcher, or before that she worked at the Apple store, and before that she was a lifeguard. So what does that make her? But I want you to scan down the left margin, focus on the left margin. Don't turn your head to go all the way to the end of the line. And tell me if you can pick up, usually it's about a third to a half of the paragraph. See if you can pick up to get a pretty good idea of who SH is with the training and work experience she's had. And tell me whether yes or no. It's not an easy thing to do, but I just want you to practice it so that you understand why it's important to have something where you can have people figure out who you are. How's your left margin work going? Okay. Does it make sense? It's an interesting exercise, and we'll hear more about scannability in steps 2 and 3 when you're setting out your long CV and then moving to a resume. Here's the breakout room instructions, and you'll see them again on the next page. You're going to be paired together, random breakout rooms pairing. Brief introductions to each other if you don't know each other already. I want you to start writing your Biopara. You can do it on paper, you can do it on your computer. But I want you to make an effort at what title do I want for myself? And what's the big picture that I want to display? Where am I mostly working in? Oh, I do research. Oh, but it turns out I really like quantitative research better. This is your chance to write it. As people are coming back, put a 1 in the chat if you'd like to unmute, and I'll ask for someone to tell me how your experience was. Any volunteers? Okay, Chidinma, go ahead and unmute and tell me how you felt about doing this. Thank you for volunteering.
Yeah, it felt good. Yes, in the first sentence actually felt good because at first I've been trying to write this. I've not really understood how to go about it, but with your explanation, it felt easier. I was in a break room with Rina, so we discussed about ourselves. Coincidentally, we are almost having the same problem because both of us are new immigrants in Canada. And also, both of us also studied dentistry back in our country. So it felt great. I really felt great. And at ease presently.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Glad that you and Rena share so much in common. It's great for me to meet more of you that I've seen on PH Spot. We'll now go on to briefly, how does a Biopara help you? I want to make sure people understand. In this course, you will learn how to write once, use it often, and disseminate it everywhere. Why do you want to do this? It's important, especially because once it's done, you don't lack for examples, evidence, figuring out what to say, and you're consistent. Consistency in the virtual world, but also now in person and other synchronous events makes it easy for people to identify you and say, oh, Chidima, you're the person who blah, blah, blah. I want to show you a framework using the instructions of how to think about using the Biopara. The first sentence is just a brief intro of yourself. You can learn this, memorize it, it'll roll off your tongue, and you never have to think, what am I going to say to this person? I can still get tongue-tied, but I fall back on the sentence that I have for myself. Sentences 1 to 3, aim for 60 to 90 seconds. It shouldn't be any longer. It'll probably be less than 60. But that is the maximum when someone says, tell me about yourself. So now you've got 3 sentences you can use comfortably, and people are going to have the big picture of you and some evidence-based examples. The last 3 sentences, or however many you choose to write, are those things that you can use in different ways. Examples in discussions, more introduction. If you're in an interview, there are interviewers who will say, what else should I know about you that isn't on your resume or that I might not have heard more about? I want to talk about how you use these in synchronous and asynchronous conversations, which are basically the settings that we work in. Would you please put an example in the chat of what asynchronous convo, just one that you use? And to get you started, I'll tell you, you can consider your resume an asynchronous convo method because you put it out there, but you don't know when anybody's reading it or hearing it. So you've got an answer. Anybody else want to put something in the chat for us? LinkedIn, that's excellent, Sintu. Great, thank you. A website, excellent, Anwar. Exactly. Yes, definitely on your website. How about other socials? A lot of people use Instagram for business, right? In the old days, I used Twitter. Now I'm on Threads. Those are also asynchronous. YouTube videos, excellence into, yes, exactly. In all of these places, you have a profile. Let's talk about synchronous conversations. Sentence 1, this is a networking event. Luckily, nice weather, people were outdoors, great. And so they're shaking hands. The time that it takes you to shake your hand is your 1 sentence. Usually after that, it's move on. Sentences 1 to 3, as I just mentioned, tell me about yourself. And the various sentences, you'll find that you will start to use them and show your expertise, which is one example, one value of the Biopara, where you've got expertise you can contribute. In meetings like the video meeting that this person's on, she may be able to use something in the chat box to say, oh, the person who's presenting said X, I found the same thing. Asynchronous. This introduces you even if you're not there. Resume, LinkedIn profile, cover letters, yes. And I'm not sure why I now have 2 slides from something that I created, but let's go on. And a networking outreach email, that's asynchronous. You hope it's going to get an answer. And even applying online. I bet many of you have had the experience where it says apply online, and it makes you cut and paste all the stuff from your resume, answer some questions, and then it says upload your resume too, right? So applying online, it will be valuable. As we wind up, I want to talk about why a Biopara is important. If you don't tell your story, who's going to tell it for you? So this is to give you power of owning your story in a way that you've woven it together with details that you want people to know. Those details are evidence-based achievements and results. And it's important because when you learn to do that and speak to the other side of the conversation of what they need from you, you're going to keep them interested and engaged. They're going to see this snapshot of a professional woman, professional man, professional human who's going to make them curious about learning more from you. And we'll talk in step 2 about the goal is the scroll. You want people to keep scrolling. I just want to show you a few don'ts. These have been my don'ts for years and we're still dealing with them. I love this picture of the little girl. She's playing dress up, but guess what? A long skills list without ratings is like all the bangles. She has 3 or 4 bracelets up on her elbow and her arm. And that's how I feel when I look at a skills list like this. The good, the language says native bilingual Spanish. Great, we know that. Everything else, I have no idea whether you're really an expert in Stata, R, and JMP. No idea whether you know how to use Stella because you haven't told me if you're basic, intermediate, or advanced. I keep hoping buzzwords will go away or buzz phrases. They are empty. They don't say anything. And if you read all of these phrases, no one says that they're a bad worker. All of us say we're above average. All of us say we can work in a fast-paced environment. We all know what these mean. These are just buzz phrases. They're empty of any evidence. And you're saying to the listener or the reader, trust me, I can do that. And the one you'll mostly hear me talk about in review meetings is self-value judgment words. We've gotten rid of a lot of the buzz phrases, but you're writing about yourself, giving someone your own estimate of yourself. Excellent interpersonal skills. Says who? Sue's the evaluator. So this is why I've always asked myself, who's saying that? Strong team player. I love the independent team player. Excellent writing skills. I hear that all the time. You'll learn lots of ways to rephrase that. And what you do with your assignments is you originate them. I said to you a minute ago, you have to write your own story so you own it. But I'll give you the words. I've been doing this for a decade and a half. I have lots of words and lots of ways to reframe things for you so that you'll have a model of how to take this forward. AI and how it can help you in a Biopara. It can act as your copy editor. This is really important if you want to make sure that your English grammar and spelling are correct. You can even specify, I want you to write American English, Canadian English, whatever different language you want them to focus on. Phrasing better is deleting wordiness, which is what I always need help with. Ask for job titles based on a resume. I put in someone's resume and ChatGPT did a pretty good job. 3 of the 5 I thought really represented him from his resume, someone that took classes with me. I went to Claude.ai. I did not like the titles at all. They sounded like they were the titles that were in his resume. Or the reading level challenge, because the way we write in graduate school, this is written at a grade 13, 14 level. I actually got to grade 8 to 9 reading level, which is great. Shorter sentences, that's great. And what I found is the last 2 sentences totally obliterated the expertise he had in writing scientific articles and making presentations. I don't recommend that you can get a lot of help from the large language models on this. And finally, I did ask with just a generic question, can you give me sample wording for a public health professional with 2 years of experience in research? I don't find this really helpful because I put in generic stuff and it gave me generic stuff back, but also some inaccuracies about what it views as public health work. So I'm anxious to find out what your story is, and I'll be seeing them when you submit your assignments next week. You've woven your story, you're taking control of who you are, You're direct and concise. You've got this nice tight weaving together that shows that you're an engaged and effective professional, and enough of a snapshot of you that people want to learn more. Closing with the takeaway is you need to control your side of the convo. You've already started doing that. Every opportunity is a two-way convo for you. Thanks for attending. I know your time is valuable, and so I appreciate it. And this is just so people understand you can use and share these materials with attribution. So thanks, everybody, and I look forward to seeing your assignments submitted on Monday. You'll be getting a reminder soon.